Hey, it's Hillary. Join me for a helpful and hopeful chat about mental health in our community. So grab a cup of coffee or tea. This is Wedgwood's Coffee Break Conversation. I know I say this with every episode, but I'm really excited to be talking with today's guests, Brina Tiemeyer and Mark Washington. Thanks for chatting with me today.
Oh, appreciate you letting me here.
Thanks for having us.
I'll let you introduce yourselves a little bit.
So my name is Brina Tiemeyer. I'm the Director of Clinical Services here at Wedgwood Christian Services. I oversee our behavioral health, mental health, substance use recovery, and prevention services within Kent County.
Nice.
My name's Mark Washington. I'm Director of Technology for Zeeland Public Schools. This is my 33rd year in education, mostly at public schools. I've worked on both sides of the state. I've done everywhere from consulting, helping 30 other school districts improve their facilities and technology, and lately, it's been all about working with the kids and technology and Chromebooks and iPads and that instructional process that we all really want to take part of.
Wonderful. Well, thanks both so much for being here. I saw a stat the other day that 90% of teens ages 13 to 17 have used social media, and 75% of them have at least one active social media profile. So social media is a big deal for kids. And they now have access to more information and resources and people than ever before. Does that mean that they are better connected than previous generations?
If you're asking me, I would say kids have a greater need for connectivity. The global planet that we live on has really formed a more connected, interconnected world that they're living in. They don't discern walls, barriers, or boundaries. Wherever they find that people can connect to them, that's what they really would like to have. And the important thing is that for these kids, especially the teenagers from ages, I would say from 10 all the way up to 18, 19, and 20, they want to feel connected, and whatever it takes. And technology is a force multiplier. It's a barrier eliminator, and they don't really care where they're making these connections at as long as they feel belonged and connected to.
And I think on the other side of it, like it can at times give or create like an illusion of closeness, because it can have both those positive effects and negative effects on children's overall mental health, which then also affects their physical health and their ultimate well-being. And so there are multiple layers to that, but I think that when we think about our kids better at communicating nowadays, I don't know necessarily what your score or scale of better communication is, because I think that we have to take into effect when we are behind screens or when we are constantly communicating via tech, whether that is on social media, like the likes or the comments or the number of followers you have, we're taking away that ultimate human connection of empathy and practicing that empathy, because we are unable to do so without that face-to-face interaction.
Yeah. So from your perspectives, how has social media changed the way young people connect and communicate?
It's been dramatic from what we see at school. I think especially at the middle school years when kids first get along there is a innate pressure for them to want to connect. Now that is different than them trying to maintain relationships. I think maintaining a relationship is not necessarily the same as connecting. So they validate, the girls especially, they validate what they see in the social media realm, what they see people liking more often than not. And so they try to replicate that by saying, I'm going to emulate what these people look like so I can get more connectivity, and eventually it makes me feel better. But it's not really a relationship. It's just it's multiple transactions that are they're being bombarded with, and the technology just makes it easier. And it's not the healthiest at times, but it's something that we have to figure out how to navigate, and especially help our kids navigate. And I'm not just picking on the girls, but the boys too. They have a not so great relationship at times with technology that leads them into places where they shouldn't go. Yeah. And so I think there's a distinct difference between belonging and relationships versus simple connectivity. And that's what technology offers.
Yeah, and you described it as transactional, which I think is not something I had thought about, but that's very true, that a lot of times interactions online can feel more transactional versus a true relationship or a connection.
They are not at depth. They are white capping. If you look at a wave, there's a lot of water there, but then these relationships are right across the top and they're just clipping the caps.
Yeah, they're stuck in that surface level versus going into inner depth conversation, or where they're not necessarily having to practice what it's like to respond to someone's facial expressions, respond to someone's tone of voice. They don't have to practice those social skills that develop over time. And the more we have increased the utilization of social media or tech through connectedness or through relationships, the more that we've seen true, genuine relationships deteriorate, because we don't have those basic skills to human connection, because we're missing that development based on our increase in hiding behind the screen or utilization of the screen.
They really, and again, I've read a book recently, not recently, it's been out for a little while, The Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt, and I don't know if you've had a chance to read that. You probably read that.
Yeah.
It's a powerful statement. It's a powerful perspective on generally speaking, parenting. And it lays out a wonderful observation as to how we got to this point. And it really refers to kids don't play enough. They don't have that interactivity, that connectivity to people. They just basically a lot of times are relying on that technology, thinking that that's a full relationship. But like you said before, facial recognition and response, and they don't do this with each other. And they're like, oh.
Yeah.
And it's really, they don't know how to deal with that. And that's, a lot of that is up to the parents to decide how they're going to present that to their children. And that's one of the missing factors that we see a lot of times. It's not just the technology has been an issue, it's parenting. It's what they're willing to do to create a culture that provides those kids those opportunities to play with other kids.
Well, because we get stuck in the inability to not only have to own sometimes our words or our actions, because we don't necessarily have that accountability factor that you have in that face-to-face interaction. But we also are getting stuck with the parents behind the screen and not necessarily role modeling how to have healthy connections. So ultimately, when you think about it, everything we learn is from experience and from watching. When we're born, our brain is developing through experiences, right? And so who better yet to teach us how to have the experience of connection than the adults in our lives? Well, if the adults in our lives are constantly behind a screen or constantly utilizing technology and social media, and then we are then learning from that. And so we're getting that little misstep. So maybe like we talk about our parents, they knew how to play. The generations before, they weren't as in depth into the screens or into social media. So they maybe had those basic skills role modeled for them, practice, cultivated, where today's generation don't have that. And so that development piece is missing in the brain. And we're seeing that in correlation to the negative impacts of social media. Kids are losing the inability to really have effective impulse control, or they're not really understanding what appropriate social behavior is, or emotional regulation. They're going around or down this path, I would say, of negative interactions because they haven't been able to develop that basic skill in their brain because it hasn't been modeled for them the way it had in the past.
And I see parents, working in the schools, we see kids all the time when they're looking at their technology and they get on the social media and they think that the social media is a real relationship. And it's based on the number of followers as opposed to the number of friends. Yeah. And you can be a follower of anybody, but you have to be a friend. I tell my kid, she's 20, going on Beyonce right now because it's just a lot of stress. But in order to make a friend, you have to be a friend.
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't say make a follower to be a follower. Mm-hmm. You don't want that. And so what we suffer from is kids will take these swipes. They will take these likes from something they put out there, very cursory. 10-second video, they see it, they either like it or don't like it. And then other people on the other end of it, creating that video takes that as validation, whether they like it or don't like it. So their relationship is based on a 10-second review of somebody who just happened to be plowing through almost 400 to 500 different, I don't even want to call them micro relationships. They were like micro-ish relationships. Yeah. And that's what's validating them. And that's not any good. And in order to have a relationship of any kind at depth, you've got to be in the people's space and presence. And parents need to really start modeling that. Like you said, they've got to show you have to take the time to build. You have to let people make mistakes. You have to forgive them. You have to work with them and being a better person. And you can't do that in a 1,000 realm micro swipe environment.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to unfollow someone when they're sitting right in front of you.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas if somebody says something you don't agree with online, you just unfollow, block, and you don't have to deal with it. But that's not how it works in a classroom or with a family.
Yeah, it's what we like to call like a parasocial relationship. So it's one-sided like emotional bonds that are forming. So when we ultimately are following an influencer or a celebrity or even someone maybe in our community that we could have potentially had a face-to-face interaction with, but they don't go to the same school as us or they're not in the same sports clubs or extracurricular activities we are, it is a one-sided bond where we are maybe checking their socials every day, investing in their life, but in return, that person is probably unaware that we exist.
Yeah.
They don't ultimately know who we are because if depending on the number of followers they have, you are just another number on that list.
Jason Kelsey didn't call me back. So yeah, I followed him and I got nothing.
Darn.
I know, right? I tried. I thought, hey, ticket, something, a wave, a high, shout out, anything. But no.
Yeah, it's that parasocial relationship, which is ultimately, again, just one side bond. And so it's really hard to continue to the point of identifying a relationship when it's one-sided with someone in person. So if I'm invested in a human being and I'm not getting anything back, that's a one-sided relationship, right? But how likely am I to continue to invest in that? Because I can clearly see that individual's not invested and it feels one-sided. So my motivation to continue through investment goes way down. Yeah. And that's what you're missing in the social media platform.
You get that addiction then at that point. That you get that validation, like someone swiped and then you get a notification that pings you. And that notification is food for your soul because it says, hey, someone paid attention to me that I've never met before. I wonder what that is. And then another person, and another person. But then again, like you said, what are you getting out of this? It's I don't want to call it parasitic, but what'd you call it? Parasocial. It's one-sided. So then the addiction of the technology and the immediacy with the responses is powerful for kids. There's no waiting for something to happen. There's no waiting for that development. You get this constant notification that comes and hits you in waves, and kids are excited about that. And so that's why all the distractions happen. And then it builds that addiction, and then they can't start to live without it, and then they lose the sense of what's around them. Yeah. They lose the the want to even connect with people around them, their friends. And so between that behavior and then the notifications and the validations, now they become more isolated. And that's when it gets to be really a challenge for people. And then parents were like, I can't talk to my kid because they're always got that face on the phone because they're connected to it. And they feel like they're getting a response, that notification thing. It's really, we have blocked so much stuff at school. The kids try to justify it by saying, well, I get my news from TikTok. It's a valid news source. It's really good. And, it's like adults saying, I get my news from TMZ.
Yeah.
Is it really the best source? It's notification. Is it validation? It's not. Yeah. And so, we've got to really start to help these kids define what's a good notification, what's a good source for information, what's a good feedback for your communication, for your health, for your mental health especially.
Yeah. So, we've talked about it quite a bit, but how are you guys in your work seeing the illusion of connection impacting kids and their well-being?
Yeah, I think so. I try to always relate it to physical health because that's something that individuals tend to think about first or to connect with. And so I think of it as those likes or those notifications as social snacking. So ultimately what I mean by that is it's like brief, superficial interactions that are kind of filling you up or making you feel fulfilled in that moment, just like that bag of chips did when you grabbed it. But that doesn't mean you should eat more bags and chips every time that you have that physical need for fulfillment, right? That's not going to ultimately be healthy or produce a long physical health well-being. It's the same with the social media. We shouldn't constantly look for that social snacking, just that little quick superficial bite of acceptance or bite of connectivity or bite of engagement or time void, right? Like ultimately what it is doing that same thing to us physically it's just filling something very briefly, not long-term, the way that an in-person, in-depth conversation could fulfill your need for social connection.
I love that analogy because on the flip side, like a nutritious meal or a nutritious relationship takes time to prepare and is, a lot more effort, but in the long run, much better.
Yeah.
Oh, that was good, Brina. I really like
It
that.
is. I wrote it's like homework. This is good stuff for me. I learned today, while out of the office, I learned some good stuff today. In schools, one of the challenges that we have is that in Zealand, and a lot of schools in particular, they're beginning to take the kids' phones away from them during the day. And the issues that we were having before is that, like you said, with the parents modeling it, if a parent has an extra 3 to 5 minutes of their day where they could be doing something else, they are on their phone. They're head down, knee deep, swiping all the time. And they lose connectivity even to the environment around them. What we found is that the kids were so distracted during the day that they were even during the day with classrooms, it's hard to get these kids on task with their phones in there. The notification, it's a Pavlov dog response. And so when we took those things away from them, when we went to a phone-free zone, now in Zealand we've gone a large percentage of that, what we do is they can use it during passing time, they can use it at lunch, they can use it before and after school, but during the instructional period, they cannot. And what we found, just from a pure technology standpoint, the simple internet consumption for our entire district reduced by 40%.
Wow.
So we set the number to find out how much bandwidth we were using. Just in the two high schools, when we took away the phones, it reduced our bandwidth by 40%. So the kids in the middle of school were doing this. And I heard the analogy of like, you're distracted, you can't get things done, your lack of focus. If you were a kid my age, and I'm old, if you broke out a VCR in the middle of class, how effective would your instruction be if the kid has pulled out a VCR, pulled out a beeper, a pager, whatever it was, and you wouldn't be effective. So I think we have to make decisions for our kids. I think we have to take some things away to make them better. And it starts with that phone. And that's the one thing that we're seeing constantly is that repetitive notification, that immediacy for connectivity. And if we don't do something with that in great order soon, this is going to tip over where it's going to be a real addiction. Not that it's not already. It's pretty profound at this point.
And the both of you were on the State of the Child panel at our State of the Child conference.
Which was slamming. That was a great, the whole day was great.
Yeah, it was awesome. And it maybe was you, but somebody on the panel said that kids don't have an internet problem. They have a stopping problem.
Yeah.
And I think when you said, we have to make decisions for kids, we are the adults in the room. And so sometimes we need to help kids figure out when it's too much.
It is not the policy of this administration to negotiate with terrorists. We have to make some decisions for the kids that's in their best interest. And sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it's very hard, but it's necessary. And I think for their benefit, it'll work. But you can't do it in isolation as a single parent. As one parent, it's like having one fax machine. You have to have more than one in order to make a community, in order for more than one means of communication to happen. And so that's what feeds it. And building that culture that it's okay to not be as interconnected. Yeah. And you can still have relationships. You still can talk to people and it's better overall. It doesn't prepare kids for life down the road by being connected to their phones and unable to manage and maintain individual relationships. It just doesn't work.
So why is true, meaningful connection so important to kids?
It's part of development. Sorry, I'm taking that one.
No, you do. Your wheelhouse.
It's part of their overall development. And so looking forward to the ultimate well-being. So when we talk about well-being, we're talking about not only their mental health, but also their physical health. And we need to think of those as interlocking or combined. And so when we are trying to teach through experience or teach through repetition, because that's how our brain develops, right? We need that repetition or that experience to be ongoing in ultimately throughout different experiences, but then we need to be able to reciprocate that experience over time. We can't reciprocate how fast AI can, but in regards to a parent, yes. And in regards to a parent trying to teach a skill to their child, they need to be able to reciprocate it. And so we do that through modeling interaction. So putting them in environments where they have to interact with other kids, or putting them in environments where they have to interact with other adults, or making sure they have to interact with us. That is through in environmental teaching and experience. And we can't do that if we are not able to control that environment. And what can't you control? You cannot control necessarily everything on the internet.
Yeah.
You're much more likely to control an in-person environment than you are something behind a screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like you can play a game of baseball, but the first time that ball comes at you and it whips past, you hear that sound, you're trying to swing it. There's nothing that replicates the experience of life.
Yeah.
There's nothing that can give you that same motivation. I think Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan until I hit him in the mouth. So until you've experienced something that's different than what you prepared for, you do not learn to adapt. And it's that adaptation as mammals that we have to really begin to say, I have that experience. And in general, too, it'll reduce the level of anxiety because these kids are living in a very highly anxious state. And I think a lot of it, and I'm not the expert, but a lot of it's because they've not gathered enough life experience to be flexible to know how to handle something different. When you're in a video game, it's a repetitive try something, reset, repetitive try something, reset. That reset does not happen in real life. If you do something wrong, then you'll feel that.
Yeah.
I remember playing high school football. You can be as nice as you want to your friend, but when you miss a block and get your quarterback creamed, you're going to have to deal with that individual saying, I'm sorry, I'm going to do better next time, not reset the game and we'll try it again.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, kids can read all number of blogs or watch people's videos about certain topics or experiences. And so you can know all of it like in your brain, but to not have actually experienced any of it for yourself, you can't, I don't know, you don't have any footing, I guess, on the reality of things.
Well, they also said there was a study that came out in 2019 that the average kid was spending almost 7 hours of screen time on their phones, on their devices. 7 hours a day on average of screen time. Most recently, 2022, that went up to 9 hours of screen time.
Yikes.
So if you think about the level of expertise it takes to do something, I think I mentioned this earlier, it takes 21 days to make a habit. So if you do something for 21 days straight, it becomes a habit. If you do something for 200 hours a year, you become proficient at it. If you shoot free throws or if you go walking every day, that's a proficient thing that you've done. 2,000 hours is a full-time job. These kids are spending almost 3,000 hours online doing things with screen time. You would wonder how they would not become addicted, how they would not become connected. So we need to find mechanisms to not only grab that screen time back, but what do we fill it with? And the kids have a valid point. If we take all this stuff away from them, what am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to navigate? And it goes back to what you said, play, connectivity, interactions, and all those things. That's what we need to fill it with. Those aren't functions of the kids. Those are the parents engaging that to happen.
So, I mean, I guess on that note, what do we do? How do we help kids establish real connections with their peers, their families, their community?
We need to model what it looks like and go back to kind of the roots of interaction and understanding that we need to be okay with vulnerability in not only ourselves, but also within our communities, within our connections, and practice, or I guess show that it's okay to have empathy in your interactions, that it is not a weakness. It is not something that you only do with your one and only best friend. It is something that you can do in all of your interactions. You can be empathetic no matter who you're engaging with, and you can practice that skill by teaching that skill. And so a lot of times when we talk about empathy with clients or families, they ask like, well, what does that mean? And ultimately what we're talking about is just vulnerability. So blind vulnerability and being able to role model it and show that it is okay to be right. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to feel, and it's okay to be in all different presence and environments and interactions. But what do we do each time we feel something new, feel something different, or we have a new experience or a new interaction? And so it's that vulnerability and ability to show that you can be empathetic in every interaction you have.
I think that's probably the best thing I've heard in a long time about how to really, because you don't know what to do when you recoup the time. I think from a technology standpoint, I can take care of the front end stuff. And I think the 4 things that Jonathan Haidt talked about in his book that were critically important, number 1 is that no child should have a smartphone until they get to high school. So if you and really, they don't really need a phone until they get to high school. In middle school, you don't really need it. But if you have to have a phone, it becomes a flip phone. So if you need to go buy Flippy McFlip from Amazon for $30 and then buy a $25 plan, you can do those. When my daughter would make a mistake and she would do things that she shouldn't have been doing, or she was wasting time, or whatever, the phone is distractive. So we took away her phone. And when she has to go back to Flippy McFlip, you get her full attention. So the number one thing is take away that phone. As a parent, you can manage that. If they absolutely need to have one, you can send them a text message and they can respond with a one button yes or no. That social media that connects everybody in a way that's not healthy really needs to go, because their brains are not fully developed to handle that kind of load.
Yeah.
Second thing you're talking about is, and it's not a John Haidt thing, this is more of you talked a little bit about it, is if you build an environment around the children that reduces the dependency upon the phone by parents actually saying that the rest of us won't give the kid the phone. The blocking of the taking away of the phones in the high school didn't work unless it was the entire high school.
Yeah.
So we made that choice at the 2 buildings in Zeeland. And by making that choice, we began to see more engagement. We see less suicidal ideation. We see more connectivity with the kids in relationships. Our athletic opportunities and our extracurricular opportunities, almost 70% of all the kids involved in extracurriculars, which builds more interactive personal relationships. So creating that culture and parents saying it's okay not to have the phone. It's okay that we connect with people as opposed to with things. And then no social media until they're 16. They can have a phone at 13, but it shouldn't be a smartphone. And then building that connection of other people saying it's okay. Now, the last one goes back to the connection piece, that part that you talked about in depth that says, we need to be more empathetic. We need to connect. We need to build into it. And so those are the things that can be done right now. And the first 3 are easy. The last one is the challenge.
Yeah.
But it can be done. And I think it does take a community. It does take a village.
So kids aren't the only ones using the internet and social media. How is it impacting us as adults? And does our use impact kids?
Yeah, I think that loneliness doesn't affect just children. It doesn't affect just our teens or adolescents. Loneliness affects everyone. And although it's not biased, right? Like it's something that anyone and everyone can experience. And the research shows that although our social media use has continued to increase, or our tech use has continued to increase, and yes, there are positives to technology and there are positives to utilization in community social networks. There are positives to platforms. Like there are those positive things. Ultimately, even with all of that positivity and all of that increased use, we are seeing a continual decline in mental health. We're seeing a continued increase in everyone reporting loneliness. And so how is it impacting? It's increasing negative self-identification. It's increasing negative outlets for when we are stuck in maybe cycles of sadness, or in not maybe necessarily going as far as saying that we are experiencing depression or that we are wanting to seek out professional help, but it's increasing that idea that we are alone. We're lonely. And we don't know what to do when we're lonely besides continue to have social snacking or to continue seeking out those parasocial relationships. We get stuck because we don't know what to do because we haven't had the experience as frequently, or we haven't really nurtured that experience for that time for face-to-face connection or face-to-face interaction.
And the face-to-face interactions take more work and require a lot more vulnerability, which is scary. Whereas if you're feeling lonely and you want to just pop on your phone and distract yourself.
Yeah, sometimes you can take, I encourage parents to role model a lot of behaviors, but also if they're struggling themselves, I'm not asking you to go from 0 to 1,000, right? Like take a baby step. Maybe show what it looks like to engage in meaningful conversation on a social media platform. Instead of just liking the post, maybe comment with an actual thoughtful question or comment with a shared experience. Make it an actual meaningful dialogue, even in that virtual world, versus just liking the post and continuing on.
Well, it's not a fair fight, to be honest. I mean, you have the social media companies, their primary job is to make sure that they have people stay connected onto their platform. The longer that they stay on the platform, the more likes and engagements that they have, the better off that they feel like that they can get that ad revenue so that the company can make their money. So having an understanding that a lot of what you're experiencing, you've got a bunch of well-trained psychologists and well-trained professionals who are not fighting fair. They know how to trigger those mind, the places in your brain that really dig into addiction and that sense of loneliness, because you're now, the more social media that you're doing, the more you become enclosed, the more you become wrapped around and in isolation, so that once they have you there, then you're also talking about a group of people who have built algorithms and platforms to feed into that. And then you either get either AI or deep fakes, or you get artificial gratification from the notifications and the likes and the counters that go up for people. So knowing that ahead of time is important. I think to say that social media is, it originally started off as something that was okay. And it was more social networking. It was more of a way to build communication between individuals to connect them on platforms. But then they realized that, hey, the longer I have them on there, the better off that I can actually try to get ad revenue and make money off these people. And they've done a successful job of that. The numbers are climbing exponentially to have these platforms take over for people. And I think the other part of it, coming from a K-12 school district orientation, there's always people around in K-12. There's always a classroom. There's always a teacher. There's always people that you can connect with if you choose to connect, but you're surrounded. Once you leave that college, your circle gets smaller. Graduate from college, you have to work very, very hard to find ways to connect with other people that in 4 short years ago, you didn't have to work that hard. So now you're faced with that challenge. And then social media comes in and says, I'm going to like you. I think you're good. And I've got 1,000 other friends that think you're good too. So here's what we're going to do. Tell your friends, tell your buddies, hop onto my page and I will give you that gratification. I will give you that feedback. But it's not real. It's cursory. It's on top. It's, again, white capping at top, nothing at depth. But you have to realize that as you get older. And for the kids in high school, they don't see that. They just see I need this, and then he'll come in. And so these companies know what they're doing. We have to give kids the tools before they get out of high school, before they leave college, so that when they become adults, they become healthier individuals. So that then when they become parents, because there's no rules to making a kid, this is what you have to do. You have to give them the tools that they need. Sorry, that's too much information. A little too far at a time.
That's okay.
I think it's a good reminder, though, that it's not a fair fight, because it can feel like I should be able to, limit my screen time. I should be able to do a better job at keeping my kid, in line when it comes to their own screen time. But it's designed to suck us in. And so it's not fair. That's a good reminder. So when it feels hard, it's designed that
There's
way.
100,000 people at Facebook trying to get you to stay on Facebook. There's one of you trying to stay off of Facebook.
Yeah. Whew. All right, I might be a little biased in asking this question as someone whose career relies a lot on social media, but it's not all bad, right? Is there any good to social media or, the use of the internet?
Yeah, it allows, there are good. There's positive impacts on social media for our children and our teens and even our adults. Let's talk about the mental health field and how social media has ultimately helped with getting the word out on breaking the stigma for seeking help, breaking the stigma for having a diagnosis from the DSM-5, right? It ultimately is helping in initiating mental health care. It is getting access to services that ultimately some may have felt like they weren't able to before because of other barriers such as transportation or knowing where to go in the vicinity of where they live. Social media has aided in that. It has decreased some of the barriers to us being able to serve. And it also, from a smaller, or it's actually large still, it helps our children and our teens kind of practice that developmental skill set of identity. It's helping them understand with, I want to associate with this, or, I like the idea of this. I don't want to really dip into that. I didn't like how that made me feel, so I'm not going to be like that. So it's a tool to be used to help with our self-exploration and self-identity. It shouldn't be the end all for those things.
Yeah, I agree. I fully agree, especially in schools where it's an access to a resource that normally we wouldn't be able to provide elsewise. There's one library in every school, but it's not as in depth as the information that's available online. And I think that those kids that would like to find out more information about things have that access, have that ability. They have more in their pocket at 12 than I could ever hope to have in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And so that's been very helpful. I think it's also when you're trying to find other people like you and you're trying to find other things about you and you want that validation, it is good. It is healthy to connect with other people's, to stretch out and learn things. When you're talking about religion and our social issues, that you want to build a community that may not be a part of exactly where you live, but you want to find out where they're coming from elsewhere, it connects things in a hurry. It reduces that barrier so that actually you can talk directly about the topic and the content. So that is helpful. It's a force multiplier when it's applied to do good.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. And
Yeah.
kids don't necessarily have the full the ability to discern good and bad. And again, that's why we got to get parents more connected and involved. And they'll say the same thing about, wow, my dad is a 74-year-old pastor in Detroit. And he's like, that son, that Tic Tac thing it's got some stuff on there. I really like it. I can find some stuff about it. And the Temu thing is really great. Floor mats are great. And, so at every level, there's a resource that's available that you didn't have before to young and old, and it can work. But again, I can't do it every day, Mark David, because that just takes up a lot of time. But I like my Tic Tac.
I like my Tic Tac. Oh, I love, and it kind of goes back to your snacking analogy too. That chips are good and fine to eat, but in moderation.
Yeah.
So the internet, social media, good and fine in moderation.
Yeah, you want to, the same thing we say about all habits, hobbies, activities, you aim for quality over quantity. And so when we're thinking about social media or we're thinking about utilization of tech, what is quality utilization versus quantity?
That's a good reminder. I really like that. So I think it's safe to say that the internet and social media aren't going away anytime soon.
No, not tomorrow. Maybe Thursday. But
Maybe
tomorrow.
Thursday.
Thursday.
So how do we talk to kids and help them use it in healthy ways? Or maybe even we take a step back and go with how do we help them use it in a way that's not harmful? Do you guys have any practical advice?
She gave me the answer. I mean,
Yeah.
she gave the playbook. She said, parents need to model this good behavior.
Yeah.
Parents need to be where it starts.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So I'll talk about from the school point of view. I think we need to make an effort to make decisions for the students to provide better
Guardrails?
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Constraints, better constraints to allow them to be free to do what they want to do, but also protect them at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think as a school, we should really push hard for phone-free schools. There is no reason why every kid should not. They don't need to have a phone, really. And I'll go even a step further. Most of the school districts in West Michigan, all the kids either have a one-to-one device, if it's a Chromebook or something else. Very few districts don't have this regular access to that resource. All resources have to be filtered by law for the school. So we've given them, if they say, well, I need my phone to get, no, you don't. I gave you a Chromebook. I gave you an iPad. You can go to the media center. We've got mechanisms for you to get that same information. So by reducing that and eliminating the social media, and we block all social media in Zealand, it allows kids to focus on what's important. We get rid of all the sugary snacks around the meal. We get actually to some decent, healthy vegetables, some good protein, and then occasionally at the end when you're done, then you get the snack.
Yeah.
But don't live off that snack. So we need to create those environments where they can reduce noise to make better choices.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing we can do. Second thing we can do is work with parents and say, mom and dad, it's okay because your kid is not the only kid that doesn't have the phone. The parents are more concerned about Joe's got one, Lisa's got one. So if I give one to Bob, Bob's going to be the only one that doesn't have that. Well, no, we've talked to Joe's mom. We've talked to Lisa's mom. They want to get rid of it. We're going to put you guys together. So decide as a group. Now you have support.
Yeah.
So instead of it being one, now it's a yeast effect. More people are in there. It begins to foster, and then you get a better result. So those are the two biggest things. Getting parental involvement to agree that this is a good thing, and then schools phone free, set the guardrails, and then set the tone that says, you don't need it. We got you covered.
I like that.
Yeah. I think for me, I would say, I agree with what he said. And also, so make time for those face-to-face connections or those face-to-face conversations. And in doing them, be intentional about what they are. So try to pick shared experiences that cannot be replicated by the digital platform. And practice active listening. That's going to be really avoiding the urge to multitask or respond quickly, and genuinely taking in the conversation, taking in the face-to-face interaction, and being able to really invest in it, and then foster your empathy through vulnerability. And I know I touched on that earlier, but I think that if we can share our thoughts and feelings openly with others in all of our interactions or in all of our day-to-day environments, we're going to see an impact across our relationships, because what we give to relationships, we get back. And so give it and give it and give it some more, and then see what you get in return, and you're going to be much more fulfilled.
One other thing right quick is I do think that parents do need to spend more time with their kids. I think there's and I hate to go old school, but on car rides, you have that app sitter on their lap. You give them a device, you put headphones on them, you stick them in the back seat and go, sweet Jesus, please just let me get 2 hours without this kid up my back of my head talking about something. As opposed to, you know what? I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to put that away. How's your day? What are you guys experiencing? Tell me what you're going through. The best thing that it was a real quick story about being a parent. I was of a mindset that when my daughter, I had to spend more time with my daughter. I love to do that. But she hated to ride the school bus for whatever reason. I mean, they don't like riding school buses. I tell her it's a wonderful limousine that's going to pick you up at your house every day. They don't seem to get that perspective like I do. So in exchange for her, I said, well, if you do good, if you put down the social media, I will drive you to school in the morning, a couple days a week. So instead of me taking away her phone when she did wrong, I would say, okay, I'm going to drive you to school 2 or 3 days a week. And that 15 minutes of phone-free, direct conversation contact really was such a benefit that I got to connect with her even in a better way, as opposed to when I'm home, I'm tired, she's distracted. As soon as she gets home, she wants to go to her friends and hop online and do all the rest of that stuff. We have to create more mechanisms where we spend more contiguous, direct time with our kids. Even though at times some parents feel it's inconvenient, it's stressful, it's like, oh, what do I talk to this kid about today? You brought them here. You cared for them. You love them. Spend time with them. That which you love will be cared for.
Yeah, I love that. This was a really, really great coffee break. Thank you both so much for being here and talking with me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being a part of our Brew Crew, brewing up hope through helpful and hopeful coffee break conversations. You can learn more and get connected to resources and find fun ways to support Wedgwood and the show at wedgwood.org/podcast. Stay hopeful, stay helpful, and let's have another coffee break soon.